Hi and welcome to GRVOTV, G's Reviews, Views and Opinions. I'm doing a beginner's guide to digital SLR photography, and whilst I've called it digital SLR, I'm going to include mirrorless cameraless, because I think a lot of people are now getting into the mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras. And really this guide would be useful for anyone that wants to basically get out of auto mode and into some of the more manual modes on their camera. Now, what I would like to do is, rather than use photos that I take, I'd rather you send me your photos, and if I've helped you in any way, it would be great to see some of your pictures. So if you could email me any of your photos, I'll put the email address up at the end. It's grvotv@gmail.com. So this is going to be a very basic guide, and all that I ask is that you get out of using the full auto mode on your camera. Now, I quite often see people using digital SLRs, and an indication that obviously they're not using full auto is the flash pops up in a situation where you really wouldn't want it to. Now, whether you use one of the semi-auto modes or fully manual, to me it doesn't really matter. I use a mixture of manual, aperture priority, shutter priority, depending on what I'm doing. So as long as you use one of those modes rather than fully manual, fully auto, then absolutely fine. So I'm going to start off with just a little bit about equipment. Now, to be honest, I don't care what you've got, whether it's a Canon, a Nikon, a Panasonic, a Sony, whatever. Whether it's a single lens setup, like this is a Nikon D50-100 with an 18-200 lens, that's a single lens setup. There's no need to really ever change that unless you want to go macro or fisheye or something unusual. But you know, as a package, that's a great little setup. Now, the other extreme is to go to something like this, which is a D7000, which is a higher end DX camera, crop sensor camera, and I've got various lenses with that. I've got the one that's on it, which is the 18-200, and I've got something like that, which is a 70-200 2.8. I've got a 50mm 1.8 and things like that. So it doesn't really matter what your setup is. So whether you've got a basic camera with a kit lens, which is generally around 18-55, we can work with that. There are limitations obviously, but it's not really about the kit. Whilst we're on the subject, I will give you just some of my sort of top tips kit wise, and I've just done a quick bit of research, and some of the suggestions I've come up with, if you was going to look to buy second-hand kit, is things like the Nikon D90 with an 18-105, which is a fantastic all-purpose lens, about £400. A D50-100 with an 18-105 lens, again, is £400. So the D50-100 is a newer camera, but probably not as good quality as the D90. It's up for debate, around the same sort of money. If you want to go cheaper, you go for a slightly older model, something like a D5000 with a kit lens will cost you less than £300, or you can go D7000 with something like an 18-105 may cost you sort of between £650 and £700. If you want to go pro body and then sort out your lenses later, something like a D300S is a semi-pro camera. And you can pick up the bodies for around £500. Now, all of the cameras I'm talking about are what they call DX crop sensor cameras. All that means is they're not full frame cameras, and we'll talk a bit more about that later, but in my mind it really doesn't matter, and it won't affect what we're trying to do here and what we're trying to achieve. On the Canon side, you've got things like the 600D with a kit lens will be around the 350 mark, the 100D 350 mark, the 1100D 225, and the 650D about 400 again. Now, all of these cameras are all fantastic digital SLRs. I mean, I started digital photography with a very basic Olympus. When I got my first digital SLR, it was a D50 with like 2 frames per second, 6 megapixels, and not a lot else, to be fair. And I got, you know, absolutely perfectly good pictures from that. So don't really mind what you use. Just going back to the DXFX sort of crop mode, we will talk about that a little bit more as time goes on, and you do need to be aware of it, but it's not a major issue, because I'll always go back to the fact that what you've got framed in your viewfinder is the picture you're going to get. Whether that's a 1.5 crop factor or not doesn't really come into it, although when you're working out what your shutter speed should be to get a steady shot based on your lens, it is useful to know the crop factor, and again I'll talk about that more in a later video. I'm doing these videos in parts just to break it down into sort of maybe 10-minute clips, just to try and make it a little bit more easy for everyone to take on board. So that's on the equipment. I'm not going to go into flashes and things like that really. I'm not really looking to use flash in any of this. We will talk about it in respect of perhaps using a bit of fill-in flash in certain conditions, but I'm not going to really go into flash and things like that. Tripods, you know, why not get one? You can pick them up for peanuts now. You can get them at boot fairs, you can get them online, you can get them on eBay, you can get brand new ones for 20 quid to, you know, 200-300 quid. Doesn't really matter, as long as you've got a tripod that's reasonably sturdy, that you can just stick your camera on and it will carry the weight of your camera. Then yeah, get one. That's all good equipment to have. And obviously the only other thing is a bag to put it all in, but, you know, not really need to go into too much about that. The other thing I just want to touch on is memory cards, whether that's SD cards or compact flash. Just make sure it's the right card for your camera. It's a reasonably fast card, so you get the performance that you can out of your camera. They're not expensive. You can get a class 6 card, which will be good enough for most scenarios, including video, and you know, they're cheap as chips now. You want something at least around sort of 8 gig. 16 to 32 is better, but you know, an 8 gig 4 gig card is absolutely fine. So that's that. Now then, I'm going to try not to use jargon when I do these videos, and forgive me if I do in certain, but I will try and explain it if it is necessary. So things like bokeh and Rembrandt lighting and stuff like that, I'm going to try to steer away from and talk to you in real terms, and trying to make it as easy as possible. So things like reflected light and incidental light, I'm going to try and break that down into what it really is, you know, ambient light and light that's been reflected from your subject. Which can be different, it can be the same, but again that will come later. So really, just to finish off this first sort of intro really, I just want you to perhaps look up, and I'll explain what a stop of light is in photography terms, because we're going to use a stop of light in different ways, and this will relate to your aperture control, your shutter, your ISO, which is your sensitivity to light on your camera, and things like that. So knowing what a stop of light is quite useful, and it's very simple. And the way I'd explain it is, if you start off with one light bulb, now if you add one stop of light, that becomes 2 light bulbs. If you add a further stop of light, that becomes 4 light bulbs, and if you add another stop of light, that's 8 light bulbs. So the difference between 4 light bulbs, if you add on one stop, you're doubling up, so you're getting double the amount of light, so you're getting 8 light bulbs. So you know, it's as easy as that. And when we talk about say for instance aperture, which I'll talk a bit about later, it goes 2.8, 4, 5, 6, 8, 11, 16, 22. Now if you go from 5, 6 to 8, that's one stop of light. Now that's the same as your shutter, which would be 1/30th of the second to 1/60th second. That's a stop of light. And again, ISO, from ISO 200 to 400, that's one stop of light. So it's doubling the amount of light, or halving the amount of light, depending on which way you're going. So just to reiterate, one stop of light up from where you are, you're doubling the amount of light. So, and I know that sounds like double the amount of light, you're letting double the amount of light see in your camera. One stop of light is not, it doesn't have as much effect as you would think. And as I said, I will talk more about the you know, the aperture and shutter in later videos. So really, that's all I wanted to say. in this intro video. So I'm going to put more up as we go along. I'm going to try and get some interaction, and I really do want you to send in photos, and if this has helped you in any way, comments, and rather than adding them to the video itself, which is absolutely fine, I would appreciate emails, and if you've taken a picture that you're particularly happy with or you're not happy with, then email it to me. That would be great. And then if there's photos that I feel could be useful in later episodes, then I will add them to the videos. So this has been GRVOTV, G's Reviews, Views and Opinions. I'll see you soon for the next part. Cheers, bye.